Welcome to Scrolling to Death. Today I have a very special guest, Congresswoman and Chair of the House Energy and Commerce Committee, Cathy McMorris Rodgers. Thank you for being here.
Great to be with you, Nikki.
Yeah, so we're going to focus on talking about kids' online safety, why changes need to be made, and how parents can use our voices to protect our children. So like you, I'm a concerned mom. I dove into this space educating parents about online harms. I feel like I've had a crash course in the legislative process through observing your committee hearings and your markups and everything that's been going on. I've been especially excited to speak with you because you're also a mom of 3, like me, and you are dedicated to getting our children protected online. So you shared recently that your biggest fear as a parent is your children's sensitive data being exploited online, which is a fear that I share. Mm-hmm. Can you tell listeners why this is such a concern for you?
Yes. Well, first and foremost, I am a mom. We have 3 kids. Our oldest is 17, Cole, and then we have girls that are 10 and 13. Mm-hmm. And really, these big tech platforms have become my biggest fear. When you think about digital data, it's deeply personal. It's central to a person's identity. And right now, these algorithms that have been developed by these companies are specifically designed not just to get our kids addicted to the platforms and keep them on these platforms as long as possible, mm-hmm. but it also leads to harms against our children. And so, a third of our teens right now say that they're almost constantly scrolling on some form of social media. And I think that's why the name of your podcast is spot on, because really our kids are scrolling to death. And these platforms are intentionally targeting our children with addictive content that leads to dangerous and too often life-threatening behaviors. Just recently, the Surgeon General of the United States of America, he talked about us having a loneliness epidemic. Mm-hmm. It's an epidemic of loneliness. Our kids don't have friends. But what we're seeing is that this crisis is being driven because kids are spending more time online. And whether it's you, Nikki, or for my husband and I, millions of parents across the nation, it really is a battle for our kids' development, their mental health, and ultimately their safety. And that's why we must build a better future for our children. Our children are our future, and reining in big tech mm-hmm. is a big part of what needs to happen and put people, but especially our children, back in control of who they are, what they think, and how they live their lives.
Yeah. And let's talk about why big tech is able to do this to our kids. So what I've observed is a true lack of protection that our children are currently receiving from the tech companies and their experiences online. And kids are allowed to sign up at 13, but really with no age verification, they're signing up as soon as they get a device, and they're being served dangerous and violent content, targeted advertising. They're being exploited, sextorted, sold fake pills, all on platforms that are marketed to children. I just got off the line with a mom today named Jenny DeSario, whose son Mason was served countless suicide videos on TikTok before he took his life. Mm-hmm. So why aren't our children more protected at the current moment?
Currently, big tech lacks accountability, and it's because they are bottom line immune from most civil liability protections because of Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. So this is a law that was passed back in 1996. So there was well before most of these companies even existed. But under Section 230, they were to moderate content that was illegal or illicit, and they were to be held accountable for that. But unfortunately, the way that the courts have interpreted Section 230, they have become almost immune from any accountability and immune from liability because of illegal or illicit activity. And, you look at in our society, other companies, other industries don't receive this kind of a protection. Mm-hmm. And big tech is using this law to shield them from any responsibility and accountability as their platforms are involved in immense harm on people and especially our children. Mm-hmm. The story that you just shared, unfortunately, is repeated over and over and over. And so what is happening today is that these platforms and companies are profiting from children. They're developing algorithms that are pushing harmful content to our kids. They're refusing to strengthen their protections against bad actors. And we see more predators, more drug dealers, sex traffickers, extortioners, cyberbullies. And it's our kids that are paying the price at the expense of their mental health. And so what we need is a reset. And that's where the package of bills that we are moving forward right now is focused on. We have the American Privacy Rights Act, which I've introduced with the ranking member, Frank Pallone. So he's the lead Democrat, and that's focused on creating a national standard privacy data security. We also have legislation around Section 230 that would sunset Section 230 and give big tech really a choice, either to work with Congress to ensure the internet is safe and a healthy place, or lose those liability protections.
Mm-hmm.
And this would ensure that the social media companies are being held accountable for failing to protect our kids online.
Right.
We also have bills that are focused specifically on kids, KOSA and COPPA, which is the Children's Online Privacy Protections Act. All of these bills are really focused on ushering in a new era on the internet, one that would be defined by individual control and free expression, prosperity, innovation, but most importantly, accountability and safety.
Right. Okay. At a hearing last month, Congresswoman Eshoo stated it's clear they made mistakes when they created Section 230, and they didn't foresee what the internet would look like today and how social media companies would be able to use that to take advantage of children. And even you said it, Section 230 is being weaponized by big tech against Americans. So I was thrilled to see you introduce legislation to sunset Section 230 and that you're putting children's safety at the forefront of that discussion. So thank you so much for that. And a lot of the parent survivors that I speak to, they're all fans of KOSA and APRA and Sammy's Law and all these things, but they really push on Section 230 needs to be sunsetted or adjusted so that our children can be protected and we can go to the social media companies when they are harmed and help hold them liable. I know there's a hearing to discuss the Section 230 Sunset Act this week. What's going to happen at this hearing?
Yes, well, we are continuing to move forward. The Section 230 bill is important because, as you said, this is where the tech companies, the social media platforms are gaining this shield from immunity. So right now, even though the law says that they are to be moderating content that is illegal or illicit, we have, I have a constituent, Molly Kane, who lost her son when he bought a pill online. And this was Snapchat, but bought one pill. It was an anti-anxiety pill. He thought he was buying, and instead it was laced in fentanyl, and he died. And this type of a story where the tech company or the platform is not held accountable is repeated because of the way the courts have interpreted Section 230. So what we're doing this week is moving forward on the legislation. So in the Energy and Commerce Committee, which has been at the forefront of these issues for decades.
Yeah.
It was the Energy and Commerce Committee that led on the Communications Decency Act back in 1996 and has continued to lead for decades on trying to get privacy laws in place and protecting our kids online. We're going to be what they call it marking up these bills. So we will be bringing these bills up for a vote. And this gives members an opportunity to introduce amendments. This will be in the subcommittee. It's the first step in the process of moving forward on Section 230, which we have bipartisan agreement to sunset it right now by December 31st, 2025. The goal here is to force Congress to reform this bill by a date certain, or the tech companies will just lose their immunity. And so we're going to be moving these bills through subcommittee, and that's the first step. Then they'll go to full committee, but continuing to build support. And it's really important that people that care about these issues are reaching out to members on both sides of the aisle right now to voice their support of these bills. We're taking on some of the largest companies in America right now. They have a lot of resources. My hope is that it will be moms and parents and kids that have been harmed that really rise up all across this country to voice support.
Right. Okay. And I know Mark Berkman is going to be one of the witnesses at the hearing this week. And I have an interview with him that is live. And I encourage listeners to go listen to that because it's all about using our voices to support these bills. And when I introduced this bill, the Section 230 Sunset Act via my platforms, parents were asking, should I go ahead and tell my representatives Representatives to support this bill now? Was it too early? Like, what's the right timing, or it's just as much as possible, go all in?
Now's a great time.
Okay.
We've been working on reforms to Section 234 for years, and this is the time for people to engage, to make their voices heard. It's going to be over the next few weeks and months, and so it's very timely.
Okay, perfect. In 2010, you were appointed to the House Energy and Commerce Committee, and you're actually the first female chair of the committee. Is that right?
That's right. First mom.
Yeah, I'm so
Yes.
grateful to have a mom of young children as the chair of one of the most powerful committees in the House of Representatives. So thank you for all the work you're doing to really make these child privacy bills happen. And you talked about APRA, you talked about KOSA, you talked about COPPA.
Mm-hmm.
What are the next steps on those privacy bills? I'm hearing that there may be a markup soon.
Mm-hmm.
And so what can we expect around that?
Yes, well, we're going to continue to take steps. These are very complicated issues. As I mentioned, the committee's been working on them for decades, but I really believe that now is the time that we have some solutions that have bipartisan support that we can get onto the president's desk. Congress needs to act. So we have the American Privacy Rights Act. That's foundational to protecting our kids online as well as protecting all Americans online. So this would set up a national privacy standard, as well as protecting data online in all 50 states for all ages. Fundamentally, it's built upon data minimization. So it just limits from the very beginning the amount of data that companies can collect. And this will restrict a company's ability to track, predict, manipulate people for profit without their knowledge and consent. In addition, it will strengthen protections for children when big tech is using this data to track and target our kids online by creating dangerous algorithms. So it will prohibit companies from tracking and targeting kids online, the American Privacy Rights Act, as well as even the collection of sensitive data on our children under the age of 17. The bill also gives individuals an ability to turn off targeted advertising. So that is another way that companies track every aspect of our lives, like our location data, our clicks, our search history, and it would require companies to review their algorithms to ensure that they're not endangering children through malicious content, which we all see is leading to these downward spirals. So that's the privacy bill, American Privacy Rights Act.
Great.
That's foundational. And then the kids' bills complement this effort. So we have the Children's Online Safety Act, KOSA, and then COPPA, the Children Online Protection and Privacy Act. They build upon this. And you think about this new world with AI and just massive data sets being collected and how the individual and our kids are just going to get lost. It only makes it more important that Congress act right now. We've held hearings on KOSA and COPPA. We had one lady, young lady, who testified. Her name was Ava, and she shared her personal story. It was really powerful to hear her talk about how, because they were collecting massive amounts of data on her, they were able to exploit her vulnerabilities. They understood her vulnerabilities, and then they targeted her through the ads, and they led her down this path, that led to ads around bikinis, and then it was exercise videos, and then it was dieting tips. And then finally she found herself with an eating disorder. And she was so grateful that she was able to break out of that. But she just shared how, because of the amount of data they collected, they weaponized that data against her and really exploited her vulnerabilities. So that's where these bills are all important. Getting the privacy bill is foundational, and then the kids bills complement that effort to really ensure that these websites and social media platforms are created in a way that are going to protect our kids online.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that breakdown. And I'm actually interviewing Ava Smithing next week, so listeners can hear her full story. I had her booked for right now. I bumped her for you. She completely understood.
Be great. She's extraordinary, and I'm so grateful that she's willing to share her story.
Yeah.
Because again, it's repeated too often in my circle of friends and family members. The number, we all have friends or family members that are caught up in the dangerous activities online today.
Yeah. So you mentioned we need to get these to the president's desk. Has President Biden indicated whether or not he would sign any of these children's privacy or privacy rights bills if they come to him? I know he has done that in the past, like with the TikTok divestiture ban bill, he sort of indicated that he would sign.
Right.
So what are we hearing?
We're still working with the White House. I am encouraged that the White House is engaging on the American Privacy Rights Act. That language is so we have bipartisan support in the House. Mm-hmm. There's been versions of it that have passed out of committee last Congress. Mm. Senator Maria Cantwell is the chairwoman in the Senate of the House Commerce Committee. We're working together on the privacy bill. Her committee has already passed out the kids' bills, KOSA and COPPA, and are waiting for action in the Senate. So there's a lot of movement in the House and the Senate. There's been a lot of hearings. We've received a lot of feedback, and we continue to get input from members and stakeholders. But I'm really encouraged by the support that we're hearing from members, stakeholders on Capitol Hill, but also people all across the country. And this really is the time for people to make their voices heard and demand that Congress take action to protect our kids online.
Mm-hmm. And if these bills are signed into law, parents are desperate to know how long until they'll see a difference in their own children's social media experience. What's the lead time?
I believe it will start happening right away, because this is going to it would impact the way social media is operating, all these tech companies, any business, any entity that is collecting data is going to be a new era on the internet. And it will mean that there's a limited amount of data that can be collected to begin with. It only is used for that particular good or service. And then anything beyond that, they would have to opt into that. I believe that it will happen immediately. I believe that with the TikTok bill that recently passed, that there is some momentum on Capitol Hill. There were a lot of people who said, oh, this is never going to happen. And yet we were able to build bipartisan support for a bill that forces the divestiture of TikTok, forces TikTok to be sold if it's going to be continue to be owned and controlled by the Chinese Communist Party. I believe that TikTok is a tool of the Chinese Communist Party, again, collecting unlimited amounts of data. I think my colleague Kat Kamek said it really well. She said it's like 177 million spy balloons by the Chinese Communist Party in America, but really targeting our youth with destructive activity. Once we were able to agree on language, there was a lot of momentum because members on both sides of the aisle understood that we needed to act. And even though, some were saying, oh, there's going to be this outcry, in the end, people were pleased that we took action because they understood that this was a destructive tool ultimately, and that they needed Congress to act. So we did it in a way that upholds American values. We want to protect free speech. We want to protect all of that, but we ultimately need to make sure that individuals are more in control of their data and that there's provisions that protect our kids online.
Thank you for your work on the TikTok divestiture ban bill. Parents are very supportive. Parents don't even want our kids on TikTok at all. We find it to be very addictive and the content to be harmful. There was some confusion, I think, on what the TikTok bill was. And I was happy to clarify that it's an issue of national security. Also, the influence that the Chinese Communist Party could have on our younger generation in their thoughts and decisions is just concerning. And so parents are very supportive of this bill, and we're glad to see it move through so quickly. What can we expect to happen next with that? Because I know that there's been some pushback from ByteDance, maybe a legal battle coming.
Yes. So it's clear that the Chinese Communist Party, ByteDance, that is the holding company that owns TikTok. They don't want to sell TikTok. So they are taking it to court. We talked to a lot of constitutional attorneys. We took months actually to write this bill. We had several drafts of it because it was a difficult bill to write. But ultimately, we feel that we have strong language that will be upheld in the courts. It was also interesting during that debate, to your point about parents being pleased to see the TikTok bill pass.
Mm-hmm.
During that debate, there were a number of members, both in committee and on the House floor, that said, we also need to take action to protect our kids online when it comes to other platforms, those that are not controlled by Chinese Communist Party, but platforms in the United States of America, that we need a privacy bill. We need to be protecting people online. We need to be protecting our kids. And so that's where I really believe that there's momentum right now, that this is a moment where people want Congress to act. They need Congress to act. And I believe that we have bipartisan bills right now that are strong. We're going to continue to work on language to address little issues or make sure that they're as strong as possible. But I'm very encouraged.
Okay, wonderful. And I actually have a lot of Canadian listeners. And last week it was reported that the Canadian Security Intelligence Service is warning Canadians about the danger of TikTok, including China's access to personal information and influence over teenagers. Do you think that we can see similar legislation to be picked up in other countries? Are you hearing anything about that?
Yes, I have. India was actually the first.
Okay.
They did an outright ban of TikTok in India.
Wow.
And there's other countries that have taken action, concerns around TikTok. And again, it goes fundamentally to the data that's being collected. Mm-hmm. And right now, there's no limitation. You're collecting personal data, you're collecting search engine history, but with TikTok, you're collecting data, facial movements, your gait. I mean, it's just the amount of data that's being collected, and then how that can be used to exploit, manipulate individuals is very concerning to folks. And so ultimately, we passed a bill that was based upon it being a national security concern. Yeah. The way that the data was being collected and used, the algorithms that had been formulated by TikTok that were very sophisticated, and they were not willing to share with us their algorithms or share any information about their algorithms or the potential of the harms that their algorithms may be involved in.
Right.
That was seen as a threat. And even the day that we marked up the bill in committee, we were voting on the bill in committee, TikTok banned their users, their 177 million American users, from getting on to the app until they called their member of Congress. We had kids that weren't even supposed to be on TikTok calling and saying, I don't even know what Congress is, but I need to get on TikTok. Don't pass this bill because I need to get on TikTok. So it really backfired in the end. But that was just a small taste of the way TikTok could manipulate its users for its own personal gain.
Wow. Okay. So that legislation was much needed. I hope that this legal battle with TikTok is swiftly resolved so that we can move forward with next steps in protecting our kids from that very dangerous algorithm. We're going to wrap up. Is there anything else that you want to share with parents besides contact your representative to support APRA, KOSA, COPPA 2.0, Sammy's Law, and anything else that you would like to share with parents?
This is one where parents need to make their voices heard.
Yeah.
This really is about our children, the young generation. We can't allow these companies to continue to manipulate users the way they are, especially our children and young teens. And that's why the American Privacy Rights Act is really a reset. It limits the amount of data that big tech can collect on our kids that feeds these dangerous algorithms. Mm-hmm. And that's our ultimate goal. And then to add KOSA and COPPA and other legislation at the same time, this will lead to a reset and redefine what it looks like online. We need to make sure that people are safe and secure, and especially our kids when they go onto these platforms. You think about these platforms were created and they were to be a place where people could connect with their friends and have this online community. And instead now, too many times we see where they are leading to dangerous outcomes, and that it needs to stop. This is our moment. Just appreciate being able to be with you, engage on these issues, and encourage your listeners to call and to continue to spread the word.
Thank you, Chair Rodgers, for spending this time with me today. I want just to empower parents, use their voices. Let's work together with our legislators to enact positive change around online privacy, children's safety. So grateful to you. And again, mom to mom, thank you for everything you do to protect our kids.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
So as a reminder to parents, you have 2 senators and a member of the House of Representatives for your district. To contact your representative in the House, go to house.gov, enter your zip code at the top right. To contact your senators, visit senate.gov, use the state dropdown at the top of your screen. Thank you for using your voices to help protect our children online.